Good morning and welcome to Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm the Reverend Katie Romano Griffin, and I want you to know that whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are, and whatever your beliefs, gender identity, immigration or documentation status or disability, you are welcome here at Cedar Lane. If you are new or if you feel new to Cedar Lane, you're invited to complete the newcomer form that is linked in the chat. And if you've been attending for a while and are interested in being a member of this religious community, please reach out to Nicole Singer, our membership coordinator. We're having a new member recognition on February 13th, and we'd love to welcome you into membership at that time. Our pastoral visitors are an extension of the ministry team. Lata Poturi and Helen Pakacek are today's pastoral visitors. They're available to support you online. Before we move forward with our service, we have a few announcements. The first is I'd love to invite you to a coffee hour via Zoom post-service to have a conversation or engage in a listening session with the Action in Montgomery team.
Good morning, Katie.
Good morning, Abhi.
Good to be together this morning.
It is.
We have a pilgrimage to Walden coming up in late April 25 to the 29th, when I will be joining our colleagues from River Road, Fairfax, Reverends Nancy McDonald-Ladd, Reverend David Miller, with our pilgrimage guide, Reverend Dr. Robert Hardees, to travel to Walden. And the pilgrimage is open to all UUs in the DC metro area, and especially from Cedar Lane, River Road, and Fairfax. And we see this as an opportunity not only to travel to a place that is sacred to Unitarian Universalists, but we will share some wisdom and practices that connect us to our love for the earth, help us process our grief, cultivate hope and resilience, and empower us to take action to address the climate crisis. So friends, if you are interested, we would love to have you join us, April 25th through the 29th, and there is information in our e-news about how to register for this pilgrimage.
That sounds like an incredible spiritual retreat, and honestly, y'all, you're going with the dream team, so I hope that you'll sign up to go. Reverend Abhi and I would also like to invite you to have a Zoom conversation with us at 2 p.m. Details are in the e-news, and I want to say thank you, Cedar Lane. I'm sure many of you have read the message that I sent on Thursday. I love being one of your ministers, Cedar Lane. It is such a blessing and such a gift. The work that we have done together has changed me, and I know that we've changed each other. And as we move through this time of beginnings and endings this January, and I prepare to bring the very best of how you have shaped me in ministry, Cedar Lane, to another congregation, I want you to know, again, this is a long goodbye, a long and proper goodbye, where we will journey together through this process of grieving and celebrating and leaning into spaces of joy. If you have any questions about this process, please do join us at 2 p.m.
Thank you, Reverend Katie. The work we have done together has changed and transformed us at Cedar Lane. And we are so deeply grateful for the many ways in which you have brought your ministry in these 5 years of journeying together, and wish you rich, wonderful blessings on the journey that's up ahead, which we hope will culminate in a successful call to a congregation. And I know they are fortunate to have you, whoever calls you. Thank you.
Thank you.
As we enter this time of reflection and remembrance, connection, and community, we acknowledge that we gather as Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church on the traditional lands of the Nacotchtank people, from which the name Anacostia is derived. They were a part of the Piscataway group of tribes. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the people who have protected it through the generations.
We remember those who were enslaved and worked this land without choice or reward. We remember all who've gone before, whose vision and labor helped create and sustain this religious community. In this spirit we gather, in this spirit we begin. Let us greet and welcome each other in the chat.
Tis the gift to be simple, tis the gift to be free, tis the gift to come down where you want to be. And when we find ourselves in a place just right, we'll be in the valley of love and delight.
When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend we shan't be ashamed. To turn will be our delight, till by turning we come round right. 'Tis the gift to be simple, 'tis the gift to be free, 'tis the gift to come down where you want to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight.
Today I want to greet joy without a trace of suspicion. I want to open my eyes to the light without a blink of dread. I want to look at my past without a whisper of shame, and I want to look into my future without a hint of fear. Today I want to dance without preparing and pausing to think. I want to belly laugh without caring who hears. I want to open up my arms and twirl in the sun. I want to fall breathless, free to be myself, full of joy that I am open to allow, completely letting go without even a smudge of suspicion, a wink of hesitation. That is my intention. That is what I want. Good morning. My name is Stephanie Williams. I use she, her pronouns, and I am your worship associate for today's service. As I kindle my chalice in College Park, please share in the chat where you are lighting yours. There's my little candle. Thanks. We kindle the chalice as a symbol of our gathered community and shared faith, and how we covenant with one another to keep that faith as a source of life, knowing that we are not on our own, and that in this faithful community of resistance, we should never forget that all life can be saved. From everything that threatens us, whether it be small groups of people or large systemic problems, that we choose to practice this alternative life with this radical faith, this radical and revolutionary love that will not let us go, will not let us down, and will not let us off the hook.
are blessed with love and amazing grace when our heart is in a holy place. When we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, and our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our heart stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
I just love that hymn, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place. Reverend Katie, guess what I brought and put in the Wonder Box today?
I don't know. What is it? Can I look?
Yeah.
All right. It's my favorite bowl.
Yes.
How did you know I wanted to show this to you?
Well, I just had a feeling.
Oh, no.
Oh,
It's broken. It must have broken on the way here in the box or something. Do you think you can help me fix it?
I didn't break it.
Oh, I know you didn't break it.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. You don't go around breaking things.
Well, I don't know. I'm sorry if you feel hurt, but I didn't mean to break it. And if you want me to fix it, are you saying that I should fix it even if I didn't mean to break it?
Well, it's a really important bowl to me, and I'm wondering if we could fix it together.
Oh. Okay. Well, if that's the case, then maybe we can try and figure out a way to do this. We could, tape it or glue
Duct tape?
it. Or, guess what? You and I love to chew gum.
We do.
So we could chew a lot of bubble gum and then take the bubble gum and put it on the bowl and then fix it. How about that?
That's definitely a way.
Yeah?
That's definitely a way. I'm wondering, though, maybe we could go with the glue.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I feel, gluing it together will actually make the cracks look better, beautiful, It's like, we're in a way, it kind of reminds me of how people are, that, we're all cracked pots, from that story. Not cracked pots, but
I thought you were going there, and
Yeah.
that would have been okay too. But
Okay.
yes, we all have kind of cracks, and it's a lot like relationships and friendships. I mean, sometimes we say or we do something, and that bowl of friendship just hits the ground and smashes into a bunch of pieces, even though we didn't mean for that to happen.
You're right, because, as Unitarian Universalists, our faith calls us to intentionally do this work of repairing our relationships, especially when our relationships are impacted or broken, and do that covenantally, in community, together. So I appreciate your lifting that up, Katie, because it really reminds us as to what is it that brings us together and keeps us together as a religious community.
That's right, because sometimes when things are at our feet and they're in pieces, we don't know what to do. We have all kinds of feelings, some that we can't even name. But covenants, like our congregational covenant, they're ways for us to begin the healing work together. And healing is all of our work. In our relationships, I think they're more beautiful once we've acknowledged the hurt, we've asked for forgiveness, we've acknowledged our mistakes, and we've made that sacred promise to do better in the present and in the future.
You mean we are cracked pots? So I wonder if one can make something beautiful out of something that is broken. I wonder what it would be like if we learned not only to assume good intentions, which is what we talk about in our congregational covenant, but also we learned how to take responsibility for our actions, especially when our actions hurt or harm others, and be held accountable for our actions, and then be engaged in the deeper work of building community together, held together by that love, the love that we lift up, the love that will not let us go, let us down, or let us off the hook.
I think you're right about that.
There is a love holding me. There is a love holding all that I love. There is a love holding all. I rest in this love.
There is love holding us. There is love holding all that we love. There is a love holding all that we
Us. There is a love holding all that we lost. There is a love holding all that we love. There is a love holding love. There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all that we lost. There is a love holding all that we love. We rest in this holding love. We rest in this love. We rest in this love.
Let us center ourselves, resting in these sources of love that are within, among, and around us. We gather in this sanctuary of caring across time and space, a place set aside as a sanctuary amid the many challenges of life, a center from which we may gather strength to face these challenges of life with courage, hope, faith, and love. In this time of reflection, we lift up those in our community and beyond who are living through significant life passages, the small and extraordinary milestones of life. Within our Cedar Lane community, we celebrate with Ellen Thompson on her 90th birthday this week. We also celebrate the birthday of Rachel Moore. Happy birthday. And with these joys, we also mourn. We mourn the passing of longtime members Betty Smith on January 15th and Margaret Meg Kotler on January 20th. Our caring extends beyond Cedar Lane to others whose lives are lost and impacted by violence, calamities, and the COVID-19 pandemic in our nation and in the world. May prayers of love surround and hold the families who've lost loved ones, the students and teachers, the first responders, and the wider community surrounding Magruder High School in Rockville, which experienced a shooting this week. We mourn the passing of meditation teacher and peace activist Thich Nhat Hanh on Friday. We celebrate and honor his life and global influence for peace. We hold in our hearts this second anniversary of COVID-19 in the United States, the more than 865,000 losses we mourn. The resilience that is hard won, and we hold the promise of a better tomorrow. Let us hold these friends of ours, our companions in this world, and the joys and sorrows we hold in our hearts, in meditation and prayer, guided by these words of Thich Nhat Hanh. I invite you, in whatever space that you're in, to settle in comfortably, noticing your breathing, perhaps noticing the way it comes in through your nose and out through your mouth. If you are safe to do so and it is comfortable to do so, you can allow your eyes to drift closed and perhaps with an inhale, lift your shoulders, and with an exhale, drop your shoulders. Relaxing your body as we settle into this moment across time and space, present to each other and the moment itself. And as you focus on your breathing, take in these words by Thich Nhat Hanh, allowing them to move through you and even repeating them to yourself as you feel called. Breathing in, I calm my body. Breathing out, I smile. Dwelling in this present moment, I know this is the only moment. In gratitude and compassion, I bow down and transmit my energy to those I love. All the energy I have received, I now want to transmit to my parents, everyone I love, and all who have suffered and worried because of me and for my sake. I know I have not been mindful enough in my daily life. I know that those who love me have had their own difficulties. They have suffered because they were not lucky to have enough, to have an environment that encouraged their full development. I want all of them to be healthy and joyful. I pray that all ancestors in my blood and spiritual families will focus their energies toward each of them to protect and support them. I am one with those I love. Breathing in, I calm my body. Breathing out, I smile. Dwelling in this present moment, I know this is the only moment. And as we enter the silence together, those who are mourning a loss or marking the anniversary of a loss of a loved one are invited to share their names in the chat. Breathing in, I calm my body. Breathing out, I smile. Dwelling in this present moment, I know this is the only moment. May it be so. Amen, and blessed be.
Each week at Cedar Lane, we have an opportunity to practice generosity through giving, where we come together to commit ourselves to serving the mission and ministry of our religious community and to support the mission and ministry of organizations that are in alignment with us. And together we build this community that holds us so closely and weaves us together day after day, year after year, and helps us make love work in our community and in our world. This week, we are sharing our plate with the African American Policy Forum. For those who attended the critical race theory teach-in that was sponsored by the UU Congregation of Fairfax last Saturday, you may have heard more about their work. The African American Policy Forum was co-founded in 1996 by Professor Kimberly Crenshaw, who's popularly known for her development of intersectionality, critical race theory, and the Say Her Name campaign. AAPF is an innovative think tank that connects academics, activists, and policymakers to promote efforts to dismantle structural inequality. It promotes frameworks and strategies that address a vision of racial justice through its programs that embraces the intersections of race, gender, class, and the array of barriers that disempower those who are marginalized in society. AAPF is dedicated to advancing and expanding racial justice, gender equality, and the indivisibility of all human rights, both here in the U.S. and internationally. There are many ways to give at Cedar Lane. You can give by text, online giving, PayPal, QR code, by mailing a check to the church. However you choose to give, we are deeply grateful for your generosity and support. Our offering will now be given and gratefully received.
When we walk, when we sleep, when we rise, we are one. When we laugh, when we sing, when we cry, when we run.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, members of the quartet, for that beautiful anthem. As we continue our exploration with what it means to be living with intention as people and as a religious community, this morning I wanted to focus on something that is more particular in that regard, which has to do with our intentions and impact, intent and impact. So I want us to think of a time when we felt wronged or hurt or harmed. Now, did the person, the perpetrator, telling you that they didn't mean to hurt you or harm you, make you feel better? Like, it was not my intent to hurt you. I'm sorry if I did. Or, I'm sorry if you think I said something wrong. Don't be so sensitive. I'm sorry if I offended you. I meant it as a compliment. Or, I meant it as a joke. Now, I'm sure you've heard this kind of what is called a non-apology apology many times with family, friends, coworkers, or even strangers. And of course, you have heard it many times in public with public leaders, political leaders saying these kinds of things. And you may have said it as well. I know, I have many times. But what I want us to do is notice how we switch to passive voice when we say that. I'm sorry if I offended you, instead of I'm sorry I offended you. Now, this kind of apology feels defensive. Almost, it's an excuse, more like an excuse than an apology. And it puts the blame and responsibility on the recipient for being offended. So this morning I want to explore the difference between intention or intent and impact, and why our intentions don't really matter if they're not in alignment with our actions. Now, as the old aphorism goes, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, meaning that while our intentions might be good, to be helpful or to give a compliment or to express our delight or surprise or to do something positive, the impact sometimes can still be bad, that they can hurt, wound, or offend someone. So intentions on their own simply make us feel good for the beliefs we have. They only become relevant when they are aligned with our actions. And sometimes what matters is not just our actions, but also the consequences of our actions. So what is intent or intention? Now, in terms of meaning, there is very little difference between these two nouns. They both mean a plan or purpose to do something. Intent is also an adjective, but intention is a noun. Intention is a guiding principle or vision that guides our thoughts, attitudes, choices, and actions. Intent is about how we think or feel. Impact is how our actions make another person feel. Intent is what we plan to do or thought we were doing. Impact is the reality of our actions, how that action was received by the other person. Intent is who we are. Impact is what we did. Intent does not equal impact. A facilitator at an anti-racism workshop I took many years ago explained the difference between intent and impact this way. He said, Let's say I'm speeding out of the parking lot and run you over and you die. That wasn't my intention, but you are still dead. Now, in criminal law, this is called constructive intent, which is the unintentional results of an act. In September 2018, Dallas police officer Amber Geiger entered the apartment of Botham Jean and fatally shot him. Geiger said she believed she was entering her own apartment and that Jean was an intruder. At the trial, her lawyer said she didn't intend to kill an innocent man. But Jean still died. In 2019, Geiger was found guilty of murder and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Now, it may not have been her intent, but the impact of the bullets was there all the same. Diversity and inclusion consultant Jamie Ott writes, "Making the conversation about intent is inherently a privileged action. It ensures that you and your identity and intent stay at the center of any conversation and action, while the impact of your action or words on those around you is marginalized. In some ways," he says, "this is a simple lesson of relationships. If I say something that hurts my partner, it doesn't much matter whether I intended the statement to mean something else because my partner is hurting. I need to apologize. And then I need to reflect and empathize to the best of my ability so I don't do it again. But when we are dealing with the ways in which our identities intersect with those around us, and in turn the ways our privileges and our experiences of marginalization and oppression intersect, this lesson becomes something much larger and more profound. This becomes a lesson of justice." End of quote. So Jamie Ott is saying that impact matters more than intent, especially when there is a differential of power and privilege. And that is more than just our personal relationships. It is also a matter of justice and equity. Now, those who are engaged in anti-racism, anti-oppression work are familiar with the term microaggressions. Dr. Daryl Wing Su, a psychologist and researcher at Columbia University, defines microaggressions as the brief and everyday slights, insults, and indignities and denigrating messages sent to people of color by well-intentioned white people who are unaware of the hidden messages being communicated. These messages may be sent verbally, "You speak good English," non-verbally, clutching one's purse more tightly, or environmentally, symbols like the Confederate flag. Such communications are usually outside the level of conscious awareness of perpetrators. As a person of color, living and ministering in a predominantly white culture, I encounter microaggressions on a regular basis. I'll give you a few examples. When I look at you, I don't see you as a person of color. You are a credit to your community. Why are you so quiet? We want to know what you think. And this one, you are so articulate. Where did you learn to speak English so well? Now, you are so articulate is a compliment, isn't it? And that is a good intention. But if the compliment seemingly arises from the assumption that people from my country are not usually articulate, it changes the impact. And if it happens multiple times, it can actually create resentment as impact rather than a feeling of pleasure as a compliment. In fact, after hearing this multiple times, I once responded to the same person, "Oh, English is not as hard as my native language Telugu. In fact, I learned English after I landed in Chicago in just a few years." But seriously, the lack of awareness of implicit messages being communicated is usually the challenge I commonly encounter when I bring up microaggressions with people. And people respond rather defensively how they can be held accountable for something that wasn't their intention. And it's further complicated by the fact that the intentions to praise seem or actually are genuine. Yet, the broader repetition of the pattern reveals the complicating factors. So, while I inwardly groan now every time this happens, the impact at times wears me down because it happens regularly. Now, there are many instances of good intentions in a similar way turning into cringeworthy moments in our congregations. A few more examples. A family of color comes to church and almost gets jumped on by a whole bunch of people who are eager to welcome them, and then they are told, "We need more people like you in our church so we can be more diverse." And that family never returns. A multiracial couple show up, and they're immediately brought over to the minister to be introduced because one of them looks Latinx. It turns out that she was born and raised in New York City, and her grandparents were Indian and Kenyan. A same-gender couple comes to church, and they are welcomed with, "We are so glad you're here because we are a welcoming congregation. But have you checked out the MCC church 2 streets down? They are a gay church." I can go on and on. Multiple examples of how we, as an inclusive community committed to being more welcoming and committed to diversity, say things out of those good and noble intentions that in turn end up hurting, offending, or harming others. But this is also a good moment as we are talking about microaggressions and ways in which we harm others, even if our intentions are good, to talk about an area, to lift up an area of diversity that has and continues to present to me teachable moments. And that dimension of diversity is disability. Now, as someone who experiences the benefits of ability privilege in a systemically ableist society, I have, over the years, perpetuated messages through though well-intentioned, that really did not have a positive impact in what I have said from the pulpit or what I have done in some of my actions. How many times have we heard this quote? "The only disability in life is a bad attitude." I'm sure you have heard this quote. I have, and I have even preached on it. Early on in my ministry, I did a sermon around needing to have a positive attitude in life in order to surmount the challenges that we face, and I used this quote. After the service, one of the members who was in a wheelchair waited until everybody had left, and then gently took me aside and pointed out how that particular statement came across to her as a disabled person. And I was very defensive. when she offered that feedback, because I started explaining why I intended to say that and what was behind that intent, and went on and on and on. And finally, she just stopped me and said, Abi, I need you to listen. Listen to what I said, to what you said, and how it impacted me. It was very hard. And I was replaying it in my head for weeks. And eventually, I learned what she meant me to learn. You see, I think on the surface, it is easy to assume that quotes like this are innocent, that they seek to inspire, encourage, and spread positivity. But ultimately, the message suggests that one should think positive, and if one does, there isn't anything one cannot do. Now, also, in most cases, these kinds of quotes are accompanied with an image of a person with a physical disability, doing something that we able-bodied people may identify as being exceptional. Perhaps because whatever they're doing surpasses our expectations of people with disabilities. If they can do it, surely I can too. No matter how bad my life is, I should keep a positive attitude. At least I am not that person. And rather than just seeing disabled people as who they are, people and human, we, temporarily abled people, oftentimes have this inclination to view them as tools and sources of our own inspiration. And though not intentional, it is objectifying. In this regard, the late Stella Young, journalist, activist, comedian, poses a compelling question in her TED Talk. But what if you are that person, she asks. I really think that this lie that we have been sold about disability is the greatest injustice, she continues. It makes life hard for us. And that quote, the only disability in life is a bad attitude, it is a whole load of BS. It is just not true because of the social model of disability. No amount of smiling at a flight of stairs has ever made it turn into a ramp. Never. Smiling at a television screen isn't going to make closed captions appear for people who are deaf. No amount of staring at stacks of books in the middle of a bookshop and radiating a positive attitude is going to turn them into Braille. It's just not going to happen. Disability, she says, doesn't make one exceptional, but questioning what we think we know about it does. So what Young is charging us to continue to question and challenge ourselves is our worldviews. And that is how we learn. And to stretch and struggle through our defensiveness, our guilt, our privilege, to take responsibility for what we say and do, and then be held accountable for our actions, especially when they hurt or harm others, be it in our personal lives or in our communities. I know this may be making you uncomfortable and defensive and guilty. But the thing is, the work, the spiritual work that we are called to do is to learn to be comfortable with being uncomfortable together. Because that's the only way we can work our way through to that place of wholeness that we call our beloved community. So how do we do this work? Again, from Jamie Utt, who writes, listen, reflect, apologize, do better. It doesn't matter whether we deep down believe ourselves to be blankist, racist, sexist, homophobic, or whether we intended our actions to be hurtful, or blank ist. You fill in the blank. It doesn't matter. If the impact of our actions is the furthering of oppression, then that's all that matters. So we need to listen, reflect, apologize, and work to do better in the future. And what does that look like? He says, well, to start, we can actually apologize. When we are told that the impact of our action, inaction, or words is hurtful and furthers oppression, we can start by apologizing without any caveats. And from there, we can spend the time to reflect in hopes of gaining at least some understanding, however marginal, of the harmful impact. And we can do our best to move forward by acting more accountably. So, friends, as we continue to commit ourselves to live with intention, may we learn to be more open to not knowing. May we learn to be more open to listening, to not needing to be right, to letting go of our defensiveness, and to letting in humility, curiosity, and openness. Let us commit to listen, to reflect, to apologize, to do better in love, with love. May it be so. Amen and amen. And now, to rise in body and or in spirit, wherever we are, to sing, "There is more love somewhere."
There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more hope somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more peace somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more joy and peace and hope, love somewhere.
Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh speaks about one of the eightfold paths, which is right intention. And he writes, our good intentions are not enough. We have to be artful. We may be filled with goodwill and loving kindness. We may be motivated by the desire to make the other person happy, but out of our clumsiness, we make them unhappy. Walking, eating, breathing, talking, and working are all opportunities to practice creating happiness inside us and around us mindfully. Mindful living is an art, and each of us has to train to be an artist. Go in peace. Go making peace, living mindfully, loving mightily, and bowing to the mystery. May it be so. Amen. Blessed be.